We move back over to North America now. President Donald Trump has ordered 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles County under Title X authority, overriding California Governor Gavin Newsom's objections. The move comes as protests erupt across Latino communities, sparked by mass immigration raids and a heavy federal response. US President has thanked the National Guard while taking a dig at California Governor. Border control agents have deployed tear gas on demonstrators, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth now warns active duty Marines may soon be called in. Trump, praising the Guard's response, declared that masks will now be banned at all protests. Governor Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass slammed the federal action as dangerous and political. But White House insists it's necessary to crack down on lawlessness and what it calls an invasion at the border. We're now joined by Ross Feingold, political risk analyst, to discuss this in more detail. Ross, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Ross, President Trump has deployed National Guard troops to Los Angeles to tackle these protests. That's overriding a state governor in these circumstances. How significant is this escalation in federal versus state power dynamics?
It's an extremely rarely used presidential power to go over the governor and to activate the state National Guard, keeping in mind that in the United States we have the active duty military, we have the reserves, which are under the control of the federal government, but then we also have something called the Guard, or the National Guard, which is controlled by the governors of the states. And typically the governors of the states would call out the National Guard when there's a natural disaster situation, like the aftermath of hurricanes, for example. Sometimes the National Guard will be called out to deal with a riot type of situation. But again, that's typically the state governor who would do that, and not the president who would sideline the governor in activating the National Guard. Now, there is legal authority for the president to do this, but apparently the last time that a president did this was way back in 1965, which shows you how rare it is for the president to activate the state National Guard to deal with rioters.
Ross, is this move legally solid, or do you think we were going to see some constitutional challenges from the state of California in the coming days?
As I said, there is a legal basis for the president to do this, even though it's rarely invoked. But there is a legal basis, and I think the Trump administration may internally, with their internal lawyers, they would have discussed the legality of invoking that authority that does exist under federal law. So I think they're pretty confident that it would withstand any challenge. But the reality is, by the time the state government goes to court, and then there's appeals, and it goes up to the next level, to the appellate court, or even to the Supreme Court, the National Guard would have been brought off the streets already, and the temporary call-out would have ended, which means that the Supreme Court could simply say that the situation is moot.
Ross, do you believe this is a genuine effort to restore order, or, as some critics argue, a political show of strength in a historically blue state, which is protesting against one of Donald Trump's most staunch policies?
Local and state authorities are saying they had the situation under control. They didn't need the extra assistance of National Guard troops. The federal government sees it very differently, especially because the target of the rioters is federal government buildings. It's not the local police station, for example, but it's actually the offices of the federal police agencies that are involved in arresting illegal migrants. So the federal government is simply saying, we don't think our federal government facilities, which we have the authority to guard, are being properly guarded by the state and local authorities. Thus, we need to call out additional resources. And in fact, not only have they called out the state National Guard, but they have put, as you said earlier, they did put on alert active duty Marines from a nearby military base who might also be called out. There is legal authority to do that, but it's rarely invoked, and it could be open to challenge as well. But this is very much a clash between the state and local politicians who are Democrats and President Trump, who of course is a Republican.
Ross, what do you think about this policy that Donald Trump has just announced of the banning of masks at protests and the brutal way that these protesters have been cracked down on? Are we entering a dangerous precedent for civil liberties in the United States?
I'm not sure what the legal authority is for President Trump to ban the wearing of masks on the streets of Los Angeles. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming hours. But hopefully, let's hope for the best, that the rioters will stop what they're doing. People will engage in peaceful protest against the policies that they dislike, and that is their right. They certainly have a right to peaceful protest. They don't have a right to violent protest or to burning cars or trying to attack federal government office buildings. But let's hope that the violence quickly ends and we could restore some order in the streets of Los Angeles.
Ross Feingold, thank you very much for joining us. We now move on to our next story, where the US and China prepare for key trade talks in London on June the 9th.